You already know about cigarettes. You know they kill you. You know they're addictive. You know people spend their entire lives trying to quit and failing. What you probably don't know is that humans have been doing versions of this for at least 12,000 years. Not cigarettes specifically, but the same impulse, the same need, the same willingness to do something that hurts you repeatedly because of how it makes you feel. And here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud: it's not a weakness, it's not a moral failure, it's not a modern problem created by corporations or stress or social media. It's us. It has always been us. It is something we were born with. Let's go back to the beginning. When archaeologists excavate ancient sites, they find a pattern so consistent it stopped surprising them a long time ago. Wherever humans lived, humans sought ways to alter their state. 12,000-year-old storage jars in the Middle East with residue from fermented grain, alcohol, not for nutrition, not for calories, for the feeling. 8,000-year-old coca leaves in burial sites in South America, chewed the same way people still chew them in the Andes today for the same reason. Opium poppies cultivated in Europe 6,000 years ago, not as medicine, at least not primarily, as ritual, as escape. Cannabis burned in 2,500-year-old tombs in the Pamir Mountains, concentrated intentionally in a way that produced maximum smoke in an enclosed space. The ancient Egyptians used opium. The ancient Greeks brewed a drink called kykeon, likely containing mind-altering fungus, and drank it at religious ceremonies for 1,000 years. There's no ancient civilization we have studied where humans were fully sober, not one. Now here is where it gets genuinely controversial. In 2021, archaeologists at Göbekli Tepe, a 12,000-year-old site in Turkey, the oldest known religious structure on Earth, confirmed something they had suspected for years. The site contained enormous stone vats, hundreds of liters each, used for brewing alcohol. Göbekli Tepe was built before agriculture, before cities, before writing, before the wheel. At a time when humans were still primarily hunter-gatherers, they built a temple before they built a granary. And some researchers now believe that agriculture, the entire foundation of the human civilization, the reason we have cities and governments and history, was not invented because people wanted reliable food. It was invented because people wanted reliable beer. The grain came first, the bread was secondary, the fermentation was the point. We did not farm to eat, we farmed to drink, and then everything else followed. Let's talk about the brain for a moment. Every substance that humans become addicted to works by hijacking the same system, the dopamine system, the reward pathway, the part of your brain that says, that was good, do it again. This system evolved to reward things that helped you survive: food, warmth, social connection. Addictive substances don't create a new feeling, they imitate an existing one. They tell your brain that something survival critical just happened, even when nothing did. Your brain cannot tell the difference between genuine reward and chemical reward, not at the level of the signal. This is not a design flaw. This pathway is millions of years old. It works. It has always worked. The problem is that it can be tricked, and humans figured out how to trick it before we knew what we were doing. There is a theory about vision-inducing plants and early humans that scientists argue about constantly. The establishment hates it. The internet loves it. The truth is probably somewhere in between. The idea is this: when early humans in Africa began eating certain mushrooms that grew on the dung of large animals, which early humans definitely encountered, The mind altering effects may have influenced brain development, pattern recognition, language, abstract thinking, the leap from animal to something more. Most archaeologists reject this as unprovable, and it is unprovable. But here's what isn't unprovable: the cave paintings. 30,000 to 40,000 years ago, humans crawled into the deepest, darkest sections of caves in France and Spain and painted animals on the walls, not at the entrance, deep inside, in the dark. In chambers they had to squeeze through narrow passages to reach. Many of those images, the layered animals, the floating forms, the geometric patterns, match exactly what people describe seeing during vision experiences. Animals shifting and moving, patterns pulsing in the dark. Some researchers believe the caves were used for ritual altered states, that the paintings were records of what was seen, that the first art in human history was made while the mind was somewhere else entirely. We don't know, but we cannot rule it out. Back to cigarettes. Tobacco was used by indigenous people across North and South America for at least 3,000 years, possibly longer. Not recreationally at first, ritually. Tobacco was sacred. It was offered to gods. It was used by healers to enter altered states during ceremonies. When Europeans arrived and brought tobacco back to the Old World in the 1500s, it spread across the entire planet in less than a century. Not because anyone forced it on anyone, because humans tried it, felt what it did, and wanted it again. That is not a story about corporate manipulation. That is a story about a species that has been looking for that feeling for 12,000 years and immediately recognized it. Here is the uncomfortable conclusion. We talk about addiction like it's something that happens to weak people, or unlucky people, or people who made bad choices. But the archaeological record says something different. It says that every human population in history, given access to anything that shifts consciousness, has used it regularly, ritually, often to excess. It says that the desire to change how you feel is not a bug. It is not a modern invention. It is not caused by stress or trauma or capitalism, though all of those make it worse. It is ancient. It is universal. It is us. The monk who fasts until visions come. The Neolithic farmer fermenting grain in the dark. The shaman in the cave painting animals by firelight. The person standing outside in the cold, eyes closed for 30 seconds of relief from a cigarette. Different substances, different centuries, different cultures, same brain, same need, same question underneath it all. How do I get out of my own head? Just for a moment. Humans have been asking that question for as long as there have been humans. We have never found a satisfying answer. We have never stopped looking.